The whip came down and cut him across the back before he could raise his arm to block it. He fell into the dust, and the yam tubers he had been carrying scattered around him like something had exploded. Chief Oba stood over him, the whip still shaking in his hand, his chest rising and falling with a rage that had nothing to do with the yams. You this useless boy. You cannot even carry yam without dropping it. Is it your mate you are looking at, or are you looking at my daughter? He did not answer. He pressed his palm into the dirt and pushed himself halfway up, and blood was already coming out from the back of his shirt. But his face showed nothing, no anger, no fear, just a calm and composed posture that would naturally scare people when they notice it. And nobody in that compound ever noticed that closely as a common laborer. Papa, please. The voice came from the veranda, sharp and fast. Anita came down the steps with her wrapper still loose at her waist, and she put herself between her father and the man on the ground before the whip could rise again. He did not do anything. The basket handle is broken. I saw it myself this morning, Anita said to her father. Get out of my way, Chief Oba said. No, Anita replied. You will not unalive a man over a yam. Chief Oba looked at his daughter as though he does not understand and does not have the patience to try to understand. He lowered the whip, but his eyes stayed on the laborer, and there was something in that look, some old suspicion he could not name, that made the moment stretch longer than it should have. The laborer got to his feet slowly. He did not thank her out loud. He simply looked at her for one long second, and in that second, something passed between them that neither of them could have explained. Not attraction, not gratitude, something closer to recognition, as if some part of him was seeing for the first time since he arrived in that compound a version of the village he still believed could exist. He bent down, gathered the scattered yams one by one, and said nothing. But if anyone had been standing close enough to see past the torn shirt and the dust on his skin, they would have noticed something strange sitting in the pockets of his trouser, a folded piece of paper, old and soft from handling, the kind of paper a man does not carry unless it means something. It was the deed to the very ground the chief was standing on. Nobody in Umaya village knew his real name. They called him Alfred because that was the name he gave when he first walked into the village 3 months ago, wearing a shirt that is old and tattered and shoes that had lost their soles. He said he was looking for work, any work, and Chief Oba, who never turned away free labor, put him in the yam barn before the sun set on the same day. What nobody knew, not the chief, not the villagers, not even Anita, who always sneaked food for him when her father was not looking, was that the man sweeping that compound was Alfred Nwosu, the same Alfred whose shipping company controlled half the ports between Lagos and Port Harcourt. The same Alfred whose name sat quietly behind three banks and one newspaper nobody dared write badly about him in because he owned that too. He had grown up in that village. Before the money, before the city swallowed him and spat him out richer than any man in his age had a right to be. And what the city could never forget, no matter how much he tried, was the memory of the day his own father was dragged out of the same compound in front of that same barn and beaten in the dirt by the Chief Oba's father for a debt of 11,000 naira. 11,000 naira. His father died 3 years ago, still owing it, still ashamed, still unable to look his own son in the eyes because a death like that follows a man into his grave in a village like that one. Alfred swore standing over his father's grave that he would return one day and make the name Chief Oba mean nothing. He kept that promise quietly. 2 years ago, walking through lawyers who did not know why he wanted it done and were paid enough not to ask, he found a record of a much larger debt, one that the current Chief Oba had taken against the estate itself, gambling with money that was never his to gamble with, borrowing against land he did not legally have the full right to borrow against. Alfred bought that debt from the bank that held it. He now owned the paper that meant the moment he chose to present it, the entire compound, the yam barns, the farmland stretching over the river, all of it belonged to Alfred. He could have walked in with that paper on the very first day. He could have brought lawyers and policemen and washed Chief Oba's face collapsed in front of the whole village. But something in him needed to see it first. He needed to know if the rot in that family went all the way down, or if there was still something worth saving in that compound before he brought it crashing to the ground. So he came back as nothing, as a nobody, as a laborer with dust on his shoes, to watch and to wait and to learn who in that household still had a conscience. He did not expect to find it in the chief's own daughter. Anita did not know any of this. All she knew was that there was a new laborer who flinched less than the others when his father raised his voice, who spoke better than a common laborer had any reason to speak, who thanked her with his eyes instead of his mouth, because gratitude from a poor man to a chief's daughter could be misread as forwardness. She did not know she was showing kindness to the one man in the world who held her family's entire future folded quietly in his pockets. And that was the complication now sitting heavy in Alfred's chest. He had come back to destroy a household. He had not planned on finding a reason inside that same household to want to protect one person in it. The longer he stayed silent, the more dangerous that silence became, because Chief Oba was not a patient man, and he was already starting to watch his daughter and his laborer with the same suspicious eyes he had turned on him that morning with the whip still in his hand. The suspicion did not arrive all at once. It came the way time might come, quietly in the dark, eating from the inside before anyone noticed the wood is already hollow. It started with a question Chief Oba asked one of his sons offhand over dinner. "That ragged man, Alfred, where did you say he came from again?" His son shrugged and said, "Nobody really knew. He just appeared one morning asking for work." The chief said nothing more that night, but he did not forget the question either. 3 days later, he found a reason to watch more closely. He walked into the barn without warning, the way he liked to do, hoping to catch someone stealing yam or sleeping instead of working. Instead, he found Alfred standing over the ledger books, the one the barkeeper used to count stock. And Alfred was not just looking at them, he was correcting them quietly with a pencil, fixing an error the barkeeper had made 3 columns deep. The kind of error only a man who understood numbers on a level far above yam counting could have caught. Chief Oba stood in the doorway and said nothing for a long time. Then he finally spoke out. "What are you doing?" Alfred did not startle. That, more than anything, was what troubled the chief. A common laborer caught doing something strange should flinch, should stammer, should drop the pencil and beg for forgiveness. Alfred simply set the pencil down and said, "Your barkeeper made a mistake, sir. I was only fixing it before it caused you a loss." Since when does a man sweeping yam know how to read a ledger? Alfred replied, "I went to school before things became hard for my family, sir." It was a good answer, too good. The chief walked away from that barn like something crawling under his skin that he could not name. And that night, he did what a suspicious man does. He called in a favor. He sent word to a police contact in the city, a man who owed him from years back, and he asked for one simple thing: find out who this Alfred really is. Meanwhile, the danger inside the compound was climbing from a different direction entirely. Anita's cousin, a sharp-tongued young woman named Ijeoma, who had always resented that Anita would inherit the larger share of the family standing, had noticed the way Anita's eyes followed the laborer across the compound when she thought no one was watching. "Uncle, I don't want to cause trouble, but somebody has to say it. Your daughter is spending too much time with that laborer. People are already talking in the markets." That single sentence did more damage than anything the police contacts would have eventually uncovered. A man like Chief Oba could tolerate a laborer who read ledgers. He could not tolerate the idea of his daughter's name being spoken carelessly in the market, tied to the name of a nobody. His pride could survive almost anything except that. He began watching Anita the way he watched his enemies. He set a curfew on her. He set a timeline on her that had never existed before. He told the house girl to report every place his daughter went inside the compound. And on the 4th evening, after Ijeoma's warning, he caught Anita at the back of the yam barn, pressing a wrapped piece of bread and meat into Alfred's hand, the way she had done several times before without anyone noticing. This time, someone had told him exactly where to look. The chief did not shout. That was the frightening part. He simply stood at the edge of the barn, arms folded, and let the silence stretch until his daughter turned and saw him standing there. Anita's hand was still half extended, the bread still in Alfred's finger. There was silence. Anita! His voice was low. Low was worse than loud. Come to the house now, the chief said. She looked at Alfred once, a look that begged him to say nothing, to do nothing, to let her handle what was coming. Then she walked past her father into the dark, and Alfred stood alone in the barn, listening to her footsteps fade. His hands closed tightly around the bread she had given him, his jaw tight with something that looked dangerously close to rage. That same night, while the compound slept, the chief's phone rang. It was his contact in the city calling earlier than expected, and his voice on the other end was not calm. Chief, this Alfred you're talking about, I sent a description to a friend of mine in Lagos who deals with these things. Chief, I do not know how to tell you this. Tell me, the chief said. Chief, the man sweeping your compound, his face matches a man worth more money than this entire village put together. I am not joking with you. If I am right about who this is, you have been giving whip lashes to one of the richest men in this country. Chief Alba sat in the dark of his own parlor, the phone still pressed to his ears, and for the first time since he had inherited that compound from his father, he felt something he was not used to feeling. Yeah, he was afraid. Chief Alba did not sleep that night. He sat in his parlor until the candle burned down to nothing, turning the same question over and over in his mind, refusing to let himself believe it, because believing it meant admitting what he had done with his own hand, with his own whip in front of his own household. By morning, he needed to see it with his own eyes. He called his most trusted driver, a man named Andrew, who had worked for the family for over 20 years. He sent him into the city with one instruction: go to the office of Wonsu Shipping and Logistics. Stand outside if you must, but bring back a photograph. Andrew returned that evening, his face pale in a way the chief had never seen on him before. He did not speak, he simply handed over his phone, the screen already open to a photograph pulled from a business magazine. Alfred Wonsu, standing in a tailored suit at the opening of a new port terminal, his hand raised mid-gesture, his face unmistakable. It was the same face that had knelt in the dust 3 days earlier while a whip came down across his back. Chief Alba's hand began to shake. The phone nearly slipped from his fingers. He thought of every insult, every order backed across the compound, every time he had called the man useless, lazy, less than a dog. He thought of the strange calmness in Alfred's eye, the calmness he had mistaken for stupidity. Why? That single word sat in his chest like a stone. Why would a man worth more than the entire village disguise himself as nothing and let himself be beaten like nothing? He did not have much time to wonder. The next morning, a black car nobody in the village had ever seen before pulled up in the main road, came slowly up the path towards the compound. Villagers stopped what they were doing to watch it pass. Children ran alongside it. By the time it reached the gates, half of the compound had gathered, drawn by the sight of something so clearly out of place. Two men in dark suits stepped out first and opened the rear door. Alfred stepped out of the car in clothes nobody in that village had ever seen him wear. Not the torn shirts, not the broken shoes. A suit that fit him the way only expensive things fit a man. A watch on his wrist. That alone was worth more than the chief's entire yam bam for the year. He did not rush, he did not need to. He simply stood there, letting the silence and the shock do the work for him. While Chief Oba came out from the veranda and stopped dead at the sight of him. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. Then Alfred spoke. This time around, his voice was different. Good morning, Chief. I believe you already know who I am. The chief's mouth opened, but no words came out. His eyes moved past Alfred to the crowd now gathering at the gate, whispering, pointing, already understanding that something big was happening, even if they did not yet understand what it is. I have been sleeping in your barn for 3 months, Alfred continued. I have carried your yam, I have taken your whips across my back, and in all that time, only one person in this compound treated me like a human being instead of a slave. His eyes moved briefly towards the house, towards the window where Anita now stood frozen, her hand pressed against her mouth. You did not know who I am, Chief, but your father knew my father, and your father put my father in this same debt, over a debt of 11,000 naira, and let him die still owing it. He reached out into his jacket and withdrew a folded document, the same one that had sat quietly in his laborer's trouser for 3 months. I did not come back for revenge, even though I had every right to take it. I came back to see if anything good still live in this compound before I decide what to do with it. He held the paper out, close enough now that the chief could see the bank seal pressed into the corner. This is the deal to your land, Chief Oba. All of it. The house you are standing in, the yam barn you nearly unalived me over, the farmland stretching to the river. I purchased your debt 2 years ago. Every stone in this compound has belonged to me even before I started working for you. The chief was in total shock as he tried to process everything happening in front of him. Somewhere behind him, he heard his wife gasp. Somewhere in the crowd, someone repeated the word billionaire in a whisper that spread through the gathering like fire through dry grass. You have been a guest on your own land for 2 years, Chief, Alfred said quietly. You simply did not know it yet, but now you know. Chief Oba begged that morning in front of the same villagers who had once feared him. But Alfred did not raise his voice or his hand. He only said that a man who could not show mercy to a stranger did not deserve to be shown mercy himself. And he ordered the compound cleared by the end of the week. The debts called in fully, the land returned to what it should have always been. But he was not finished yet. He turned to Anita, who stood frozen on the veranda. He walked to her slowly and in front of everyone who had once looked down on her for showing kindness to a nobody. He told her that her decency had not gone unnoticed, that a portion of that land and everything built upon it would be signed into her name alone, not her father's name. The last thing the village saw that day was Chief Oba led away in disgrace.